Welcome to our class lesson on curves in Photoshop and Photoshop Elements. And this is just the basics. Curves is very detailed. There is so much you can learn about curves, and so this is meant to only cover the basics. I want to show both Photoshop and Photoshop Elements because in order to understand the tools in Photoshop Elements, you almost have to have a sneak peek at how it works in Photoshop itself. So curves is levels on steroids. We've already reviewed levels, and levels gives you 3 points, which is very limiting. It gives you the white point, the black point, and the mid-tone point, and here they are circled. And as you're familiar with the levels, we can move these sliders, and we have the black, the mid-tone, and the white. But curves let you target specific tonal regions. So in this example that you see most often, you have your black point on your levels, and you have your black point on your curves. You have your white point on your levels to the right, and you have your white point on your curves to the right. And then you have your midtones directly in the middle, and that's where it is here in curves. However, with curves you can target not just 3 spots, but any spot on this entire line. Now you also have your mid-toned highlights and your mid-tone shadows, which are common points that are moved. And so basically anything, same with levels, anything on the right side, especially up here on the last graph section, 1/4 of the bar, are your highlights. Anything over up in here on this side is your highlights, just like over here on your whites. And your shadows are anything on this side, just as it is over here on levels. You can make in curves, you can make only the shadows lighter, or you can make only the highlights lighter. You cannot do that in levels. When you do this, it affects all of the pixels that are lighter or all of the pixels that are darker. Here you can go out there and select just the lighter pixels right here and make them brighter or darker, or you can do the shadows only. So those are the big differences where you get levels on steroids. Here's another look at the levels that we're already a little bit familiar with. We have the contrast slider, which is this top one where we've circled, where we always talk about it and we always use it, and they call that the contrast slider. But we never ever use this bottom one where it says output levels. I'm not even sure why it's there, but it's actually the brightness slider. It makes all the black pixels darker if you move this one, or it makes all the white pixels whiter or darker if you move this one. So it's kind of purposeless. Is that a word? Purposeless. Here is the old curves dialog box like in CS2. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it used to have this little output slider up here. Okay, just as we have it from dark to light at the bottom, as we were just reviewing, where the left is the dark and the white is on the right, there's actually an imaginary dark to bright over here on the left, but they've removed it because because the vertical affects the brightness and the horizontal affects the contrast. So people are confused because this is not necessarily the contrast and it's more the input. So anyway, so this one got removed, but it's a little bit helpful to look at it, to visualize what you're doing. So if you choose the pixels that are in this mid-tone highlight range, and you click down here to put a point on the line and you move it upwards, move that point upwards, you're moving those tones so they are lighter. And if you slide it downward, you are moving those tones so they are darker. Same thing over here. If you are looking for all the pixels that have about this shade in the shadows, about this shade, and you move this upward, all those pixels will become this much lighter. If you want them really light, like all white, you'd move them all the way up. Or if you want to make those shadows even a little bit darker, you would move them down. However, you can click on make a point, let's say right here on these shades of colors, and change the contrast by going right or left also. But this old dialog box kind of helps us see the brightness slider. But you can change the brightness, the contrast going left or right, or the brightness going up or down. It's all very confusing because you'll hear in tutorials they also say that the brightness going up and down affects your contrast. Well, it does, because if you make things over here darker and over here lighter, you're having a contrast of dark and light. So it's all quite confusing. The horizontal is not used very often, just as in the levels down there at the bottom of that. It's not used very often. So for beginners, it's best to start on thinking this dark to light here. And another thing for beginners, it's called remapping. You're remapping the colors from this tone to whatever this output tone is. You also have and this is continues to be in our versions, the input tone and the output tone. So you're going from 191 to 201 if you're increasing it, or let's say 181 would be going down. You're remapping it. Why is it called curves? There is always a trade-off. If you add contrast in one tonal region, it must result in a decrease in another tonal region. You're going to kind of see that here in a minute. So you are remapping or redistributing the contrast. When you're remapping or redistributing contrast, it creates a curved line rather than that straight diagonal. The reason it is curved is so that the change blends smoothly throughout the image. I've read that you have a certain amount of contrast in the entire image and you have to redistribute it, put it in different places. So let's take a look at the most common curve. It's called the S curve, and maybe the things that on the previous screen will make a little more sense. Here it is. Here is the S curve. Now they've made the highlights brighter. So if you look here, they've put a point down. The line used to be diagonal straight right through these intersections, and they've put a point down right here and raised it up. And we're going to get right into Photoshop and play with these things later. But when they raised it up, you see it also affected these and these. It changed and redistributed it and made it a curve. You can't just take one tone and change it. You have to redistribute all of them and it makes a curve. Or they took the shadows from this intersection, they made a point and dropped it downward to make the shadows darker. Of course, you see it made a curve, so it took all of these that used to be up here and brought them all down. So there's a redistributing going on. But that is a typical S-curve, and if you're starting out, that's where you might want to focus and expand on from there. There's also another common one. I don't know how common it really is, but it's called an inverted S-curve. So here is your S-curve. This is a little better because they stayed on the line. I grabbed some of these images off the internet. So the S-curve adds brightness and contrast to the mid-tones, and here comes the trade-off again. It trades off with the shadows and the highlights. But an inverted looks like this. So with the S-curve, we've started here on this intersection and gone up on the highlights. Here we've started on the intersection and gone right, which is contrast instead of brightness. On the shadows, we've started here and gone down, and over here on the inverted S, you've started here and gone over. So you can see, instead of the line dipping down over here, the line is dipping up over here. And instead of the line dipping up over here, it's dipping down over here. So it's inverted, exactly the opposite. And I put brightness contrast because, you know, we're talking about moving it up to create brightness, but it's really contrast. It's so confusing, I know. So this one adds contrast to the shadows and highlights as a trade-off for the midtones. You see the midtones are moving more here. On this one, the midtones are not moving. On the S-curve, the highlights and the shadows are moving and not so much the midtones. And in this one, the shadows and the highlights still have more of an angle, but look at what it happens to the midtones. So, subtle effects. I tell you what, people get in here and they start doing these curves, and oh, you get to doing them and you're like, wow, that's a wow photo, and really it doesn't work well. You want to go subtle with it. You don't want to make drastic changes. So the levels and the curves, both of these adjustment layers, affect both the luminosity, which is also a brightness, oh, it's so confusing, I know, and color saturation of an image. So to fix this and make it more subtle, to make the edits apply to just the luminosity, the brightness, which this is what I like to do, because it leaves your photo looking a little more realistic. You apply the luminosity blending mode to your adjustment layer, and then you tone it down by moving the opacity slider. Now if you wanted to apply it just to the color saturation, you would change the blending mode to the color blending mode and use the opacity slider. We're going to play with that in a little bit, and you'll see hands-on how it affects it. Now so far we've been looking at overall contrast and tonal range. It applies, the default applies to all the RGB values. And so there's a drop down here, and you can change that drop down by choosing it to be red, green, or blue, RGB, red, green, or blue. And there are some samples. Here's the default where it applies to all, and then red, green, and blue. You will remember from a previous lesson, and you need to go back and review it if you need to reinforce these concepts, but where you have red and cyan, which is this one, this is the red channel. If you move your red up, your cyan goes down. If you move your cyan up, your red goes down. You will hopefully remember this from a previous lesson. If you move your green up, your magenta goes down. If you move your magenta up, your green goes down, if you're in the green channel. And the same thing with blue. If you move blue up, your yellows go down, and if you move your yellows up, your blues go down. So, as an example, and we're going to go out there and play with this in a minute, you choose the blue channel. So we're going to choose the one that's the blue channel, and you click on that mid-tone line right here, and you move it up to make it bluer. Of course, you could choose just the highlights if you wanted and move it up, or just the shadows and move it up. You move the mid-tone line down, you grab that and you move it down, and then there's not enough blue and it leaves a yellow cast. So if your photo is yellowy, you can fix it by going into your curves channel, into the blue channel, into your curves tool, into the blue channel, and adding blue, which takes away yellow. Or if, as I was saying, if you only have yellowy in the highlights, you can put a point down here and move the blue up over here. If only your shadows are bluey, you could come over here and put a point down and move it up. Using the eyedroppers, you know, we've used this, it works very similarly to in the levels. The black eyedropper takes whatever part of the image it is clicked on and remaps it to black. And the white eyedropper takes whatever part of the image it is clicked on and remaps it to white. And as always, it's hard to find that neutral gray color, that 50% gray in your photo. And there are tricks out there that you can learn. Those are more advanced. We're in a basic tutorial. But one trick is that the whites of your eye are not always really truly white. So you can click on them with the natural gray, and sometimes that just works beautifully. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. It depends. Some people's whites are brighter than other people's. So try a different person if it doesn't work. Don't overdo it. This is kind of what we were talking about, making it subtle. But there are other reasons for not overdoing it. Anytime you have a process such as the levels or the curves that stretches the histogram. Remember, we have our mountain and we stretch our mountain so that it covers all pixels, back from the levels lesson we had. It has the potential to cause posterization. How do you know when something is posterized? I'm sure you've seen this image before. The histogram has these vertical spikes on top of it, kind of like a teeth with a comb. That's how you know that it's a posterized image and it might not be very good. Of course, whatever looks good to you and prints good is good. That's the bottom line. But this is the cause of overdoing your curves. You want it to be smooth like this one. Smooth gradation rather than a jumpy gradation. And so I just remembered I need to turn off my whoops, where is it? Well, oh, it's off. My Yahoo Messenger. I had to check. I was afraid something was going to pop up on me here and ruin my video. Okay, so you want a smooth gradation, kind of like, think of a gradient tool and how it goes smoothly from one color to the other. You want it to be smooth and not jumpy. And Another thing is, I don't know if you can even do this in Photoshop Elements, but you can in Photoshop if it's available. Use 16 bits instead of the 8 bits. So, options in Photoshop Elements. It looks like this. You have defaults over here, which we will look at these, and you have your curves line here, and you have these sliders. There's 4 sliders here, but there's actually only 3 points you can move, just like in the levels. You don't have all the options that they have in the full version of Photoshop, where you can go in here and click anywhere on this line that you want and make a point. But you have your mid-tone highlights, which is this one, and you have your mid-tone, which is in the middle, and you have your mid-tone shadows, which is here. You have the capability to move your black or your white points. However, there are 2 options for the mid-tone point. This one in the middle, that's where you come up with 4 sliders. The one in the middle allows you to go up and down for brightness, and it allows you to go left and right or horizontal for your contrast. So this top one adjusts this slider, the middle 2 adjusts the middle slider, and the bottom one adjusts this one over here. So you're a lot more limited in Photoshop Elements. But you have some presets in Photoshop Elements which are good for those who use Photoshop to observe. So see, the 2 programs help us teach each other. You have the backlit preset, which looks like this. And so what it has done, it looks like it has taken the highlights and brought it down, and it has taken the shadows and brought it up. And then of course in Photoshop Elements, those sliders we were just looking at, you can choose this as your preset and then move those sliders to change it up a little bit more. And darken highlights looks like this one. It looks like this has been brought down and this has been brought up. So these 2 are here together because they're similar at the top. And then the next one is your default, which is your straight line. When you bring it up, it comes up like this. So if you want to use your straight diagonal line and start from there, you can. The increased contrast looks like this one. And if you're in Photoshop, a Photoshop user and want to save this video and observe these, you can refer back to them and play around. Maybe stop the video and go play around. But here the highlights have been increased just a slight bit, and this is more your S-curve. This is more of your basic S-curve. Increase midtones. This has brought all of them up just a little bit, even the middle one. All 3 of them have been brought up just a little bit. And lighten shadows looks like this. Here's your shadow one, which has been raised up quite a bit, and this one has not changed much at all. So this just has brought this one up a little bit. And solarize, don't ask me why you want to do this. I mean, it just gives you funky results. So let's go into Photoshop and play around. So I have this photo here of my husband and his siblings. One of them has now passed away. And we're going to go to the new adjustment icon and choose curves. And here is our curves dialog box. And I have this one here goes from tiny to a little bit wider. And so let's play around. We have 2 boxes on here. They're called points, and I can select either one The white ones is selected now, and you can see it's 255. You may recall that from previous lessons, and I can select the black one and it's 0. We've learned about the 255 to 0 in previous lessons. Now if I want to do the S curve, there's no point there right now, but I'm going to click down right here to create a point, and you can see whenever it is blackened in, that's the point that is selected. The other two are now not filled in. And we can just raise this up, grab it and raise it up, and you can watch what it does to brighten the highlights. And then you can click down right on the line and lower the shadows. And this is basically it. That is your typical S-curve. Now you may want to bring up your histogram and watch it while you're doing these changes. You can see what a big impact. There's a before and after. Let's see. Before, after, you can see what just a simple S-curve does to this photo. Is that not wild? So this button here, I think this is a histogram out here too, that you may want to watch your histogram. Where is my histogram? Here, to make sure that it's not doing anything too funky. But we're not going to get into that right now. We're just hitting the basics. So I'm going to hit this refresh, which takes it back to the default. Now if I wanted to do the inverted, I'm going to grab this one and bring it this way. And I'm going to grab this one and drop it over here. I'm not sure see why you would want to do that. The inverted I don't think is used a whole lot. It's just kind of odd. But let's go ahead back and put this one and this one for your typical S curve, and go back to our layers, and I'm going to go ahead and apply the luminosity. So you can see that here we're going to do the eye on, off. So here you can see it only affects the luminosity of the photo, and I can make it even subtler of a change by I grabbed the fill instead of the opacity, by changing the opacity, and so now it's not so drastic. Or we can change it to the color, where it only changes the saturation of the image. You can see her red shirt getting so much redder. Or if you wanted to do, I'm going to hit Control J because we have the same curve, and this one is going to stay at color and this one is going to go to luminosity. And now we can apply each of them at different strengths. Maybe I want to do more changing on the luminosity and less on the saturation. And so then we have that combination going on. Okay, let's go back to our adjustments. Oops, let's go back and put it on normal, just so we can play around. And let's hit the refresh so it goes back to our default. Now let's look at the eyedroppers. So we have the white eyedropper, and I'm not sure what's white. I think this in her shirt probably is white. It says socket to Cancer. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see it immediately adjusts it, but you can see it brings up these other lines in here when we do that. Why did it do that? Because it also has affected the green and the red channel. So it shows you exactly, it's not affecting overall, but it is calculating it for all the different channels. It's not just doing overall tone, and it's calculating it for all the channels and changing it. And so you can see it the black line is the default, so it really moved the red up a lot and the green a little bit too. Now I'm going to use the black one and find something black. I guess his belt would be good, and you can see that brought up the blue one too and really moved it, and so it adjusted that accordingly. So we can click on this and do before and after and really see how the color curves are changed. Awesome, really awesome, huh? Now if you wanted to find a neutral gray, let's find somebody's eye. I think I used his eye earlier. He's looking to the side, the turkey. And you can see that even changed it even more. And here is before and after. So that's what we can do with the eyedroppers. And like I said, there's so much to learn in here. We're going just for the basics. I'm going to click reset, and we're going to review where I said blue and yellow. So if this image was too yellow, I could grab right here on the midtones and make it bluer to get rid of the yellow, but you'd probably only want to do it a little bit. You can see if I bring it down, it becomes much yellower. This, if you look at this, doesn't this look like one of those photos that you've scanned in from a photo book that is yellowed with age for a while? And so if it comes out and it looks like this, you're going to want to come in here and to the blue channel and raise it up to get rid of that. Now let's say just the highlights were too yellow. You would grab it here and make just the highlights. Yuck. And or just the shadows, or at any other point. So we're going to go back to the default. Let's say our image is too red, then we're going to decrease the redness, but then you decrease the redness and it brings in the cyan. So there's trade-offs. So that is a little bit about that. I think we've covered the basics. Here's negative. You can save these, like you can do an S curve, and see there is a lighter medium contrast. You can save them, and there's strong contrast. You can see they put in a slider right here and drop that one down right there. You can save these when you get some that you like, and use one-click settings to get what you like. Okay, let's close out of Photoshop, and I'm going to go in here and open Photoshop Elements. I didn't want to have them both open at the same time because that takes up too much RAM on my computer. So this will take just a minute, and we're going to review what it looks like in Photoshop. Let me go in here and open up that same photo. And in Photoshop, if you go to the Enhance drop down menu, Adjust Color and Adjust Color Curves, this is the box that you get. And you see, as we reviewed them, here's your default, and it's your straight vertical line. And you get to see your before and after. Now, if we wanted to move this slider here, you can't just click out here like you can in Photoshop. You have to move this, and you see it moves it upward to make it lighter. So if you're wanting just your highlights to be lighter or your highlights to be darker, you could move that. If you wanted your midtones, now remember these two middle sliders are just moving this center one. You could move it brighter or darker, or you can change the contrast and go left to right. Ick. Or you can move just this one. So if you were doing an S curve, you can create that here on your own, because the S curve is moving this highlighted one up and the shadow one down. And there we have created our own S curve in Photoshop Elements. As I said, you can't do it like you can in the full version and click anywhere on the line. You're stuck with what they allow you to do. You can click around and see what the other ones do first. It's meant to be more intuitive and by the eye to see what fixes your photo for those people that don't understand the curves as much. But if your photo is backlit, it gives you this preset similar to that preset we just looked at in Photoshop, where it gives you a starting point, and then you can go ahead and tweak it some more from there. So if something's backlit, you see it starts out with the highlights a little bit down, and so you can bring them even further down. If you want to darken the highlights, which is the same thing as what backlights are doing, but it's not darkened just as much, you can increase contrast, which this is more the classic S curve. So you can see that is the most effective one. You can increase midtones, which increases all three upward, and then adjust them from there. You can lighten shadows, or you can solarize. See, I don't even know why people would want to solarize. That just does weird things to photos. So, like I said, the increased contrast is your classic S curve, and then you would click OK. But you know what I forgot to tell you? You always want to Control J and duplicate it, because this does make permanent errors, permanent changes. There is no adjustment layer for curves in Photoshop. It does make permanent changes, so tuck one away just so you have an original to go back to, and then adjust your color curves. I'm going to increase contrast a whole lot here, make it drastic, and then you have here your before and your after. So you can do the basics in Photoshop Elements with color curves. So show me some before and after photos using your curves, and I'm curious. Got a few of those posturized spikes over here, but not too bad. In the levels, as we talked about, here's the creating contrast slider, but check out this one that we never ever use. See what it does? It like tones the whole thing down. It makes all of it light or all of it dark. It might be good if you're doing something for a background for a photo. And you also have your red, green, and blue in here that you can do the same thing with in making it, decreasing your reds or yellows or whatever. Anyway, I'm done. I want to see your 2 photos, before and after photos, using your curves.